Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, world. Welcome once again to Tuesday Talk with Key West Lou. I am your host, Louis Patrone. Okay, my friends, happy to be here with you again this week. Remember, you can call in and ask questions, make a point, say something, discuss an issue with me. The number is 646-478-5731. I repeat, 646-478-5731. The number is on the screen in front of you. I am happy to hear from you if you are so inclined to call. Tonight we have a multitude of sins to expose. The only way to describe it, a multitude of sins. Things that are kept from us, kept from the tax-paying public, kept from the voting public, kept from the American citizenry. These are the things I want to talk to you about this evening. But before we get into the hot, heavy, and serious, I know that many of you who listen to this show are Syracuse fans. You follow me. I love you. And I'm a Syracuse grad also. I bleed orange. We play Pitt tomorrow night, my friends, at Pitt. Syracuse is presently undefeated, number 21 in the country, number 1 in the country, 23 victories, no losses. We beat Pitt a couple of weeks ago by about 5 points. We play them again tomorrow night at Pitt. Going to be a hell of a game. Hope we win. It's one of those things. We're due to lose, unfortunately, because no team in this basketball college era can go undefeated, I believe. All right, now let's get to the sins of government. I want to talk first about the Farm Bill. You have no idea how important this Farm Bill is to somebody. Forget it's important to the people, how important it is to other people. The Farm Bill was signed into law just this past Friday by President Obama. It was portrayed as an example of bipartisanship. Both sides voted for it. And after you hear what I'm going to tell you, you'll understand why both sides voted for it, because a lot of people on both sides are eating off this bill. Let's get into the history of the bill first of all. The Farm Bill had its birth in 1933. It was part of the New Deal, President Roosevelt's New Deal. It was the height of the Depression. The farmers weren't making any money. No one had money to buy their crops. People were starving. They didn't have money to buy food. So it was a double-edged sword. Everyone was getting hurt. Roosevelt felt something had to be done. So he came up with the first Farm Bill. It was called the Agricultural Act of 1933. And basically it provided that farmers could be paid what was called a subsidy for not growing food. In other words, what's the sense of growing something that you can't sell? You can't afford to buy the seed. You can't afford to farm it. And if you could be able to, you still can't sell it. So we're going to pay you not to farm. Leave your land barren, and this way you'll survive. And when things get better, hopefully, then you'll plant and you'll make money on your own. Things didn't work out that way though. And then he was concerned about the people who could not eat. You've seen pictures of this. Men on street corners selling apples for a penny apiece. Terrible times. So he started a nutrition program that would provide food free to people who needed it. This nutrition program was a precursor to the present-day food stamp program. And the food bill of today has those same two things in it. Help the farmers. They don't have to grow crops, or we'll pay them if something goes wrong. And we have the Food Stamp Act to help the people who can't afford to buy food. The bill is for 5 years. The law is for 5 years every time it's passed, and it just went into effect this year, so we got 5 years to go on it. And this one has some changes in it also, which we are going to explore. Normally, the government would pay the farmer X number of dollars for not farming so many acres. Then in 1996, some changes started taking place. Not totally, but a step at a time. And they came up with a crop insurance program. Certain farmers, instead of paying them a subsidy and say don't farm, they could buy crop insurance. It was an insurance policy The premium was mostly paid by the government, by the way, for the farmer. And if it was a bad year, the crops didn't grow right, there was a blight, or the price of whatever the product was fell, the insurance policy would make the farmer whole. I want to tell you, since 1996, this crop insurance program, all right, has paid out more money proportionately than the subsidies were. This is a bigger steal. All right, now, and remember, the government pays, I think, 62% of the premium. Now what happens? Well, we come to this year's bill. Here's my problem. We have congressmen voting for the bill. Many of the congressmen, members of the United States Congress, House of Representatives and Senate, who vote to approve this bill that's going to pay them, in effect, subsidies before directly and now by crop insurance, farms. They may live in a city, but they own a piece of a farm someplace, and they get a check if things go bad, and they've been getting checks for years, as I'll point out to you later on in the show here. And this is wrong. The people who vote for the law eat off the law. They eat off the law. And we don't know who they are. And do you know why? Because the new bill for 2000, that just went into effect 2014, makes no provision for transparency. It was in the original bill that went before the House and Senate. At the final moment, before the last vote, they took out that members of Congress and members of the President's cabinet or their immediate families were to be identified if they were receiving benefits under the farm program. They made it blind, so we wouldn't know who they were, okay? Not quite nice. At the same time, this is a good investment. There are celebrities and rich people in this country, including bankers, who are farmers. Let me go through some of these things with the farmers for you so you know who they are, the congressmen. For example, the representative, and this is based, by the way, on 2012 figures. These people that I'm going to mention, congressmen of the United States, received themselves directly or their spouses in 2012 the following: Representative Doug LaMalfa and his wife, Republicans of California, 1 year, my friends, $62,857. Representative Frank Lucas' wife, his wife alone, Republican of Oklahoma, $14,584. Representative Stephen Fincher, Republican of Tennessee, $70,574. His wife was included in that. Senator John Tester, Democrat of Montana, $21,281. Senator Chuck Grassley, this is a do-gooder. We see him all the time on TV. Republican of Indiana, $9,935. And the old-timer, I'm shocked at this, Senator Orrin Hatch and his wife, Republican of Utah, distinguished United States Senator, $10,506. Now, besides them, there are other people who make it. This is a good deal, money-wise. This is an investment. President Jimmy Carter. President Jimmy Carter has received benefits under this program for years. He got money for not growing. I think in his case it might be legitimate. He's a peanut farmer, remember, from where? Georgia? So he was a farmer. But how about Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft? Leonard Lauder, former CEO of Estee Lauder Companies. Estris Coultry, founder of Chick-fil-A. Charles Schwab, brokerage firm, Charles Schwab Corporation. And listen to this name who's into this thing. David Rockefeller Sr., former chairman and chief executive officer of Chase Manhattan Bank. Now, you have to understand that in 1933, farmers were farmers. It was Ma and Pa and the kids working on the farm. There were no big industrial farms, no big corporate farms. The world has changed in the last 60 years, 80 years, since 1933. Because today, the most of your farming is done by major, what they call them, agri-corporations, like Monsanto. There's 6 major corporations that control like 90% of what is grown in this country. These corporations have been getting subsidies for years. These are rich corporations. These aren't a General Motors or a Chrysler that's in trouble. They're profitable corporations. And they've been getting the check not to grow. They've been getting subsidy money. They didn't need subsidy money. And now I am telling you that under the crop insurance program, they're going to come out terrific. They're going to buy insurance up the butt, and they're going to have claims if anything goes wrong at all, and they're going to be paid. Now, at the same, I'm just trying to let you see who's benefiting from this. The congressman who voted for it, and we're not supposed to know their names. The reason I had these names, by the way, is one of these open government groups came up with these names for previous years. But understand, in the new law, absolutely no way are we to know who the senators and congressmen were who voted for this law and are getting money as a result thereof. What I find even more amusing is this. A farm is a farm. A farm is a farm. That sounds strange the way I'm saying it, but a farm's a farm. A farm's out in the country. It's rural. Well, I'm going to give you major cities in the United States. I'm going to share them with you and tell you how many checks, subsidy checks, have gone out to these addresses in these cities. And you ain't going to find farms in these cities, my friend. This is based on records of 2010. Payments made, payments mailed to the following addresses. Chicago, 734 people got checks in Chicago, subsidy checks for not farming. New York City, 290 residents got checks. Miami, 203. Phoenix, 486. Washington, D.C., a lot of farms in Washington, D.C. It's a huge place. 195 people. Denver, Colorado. I don't think they have farms around Denver, but Denver itself is a biggie. 1,146 people received checks not to grow anything on certain parts of their purported farmland. Spokane, Washington, 1,224 people got checks. And Seattle, 564. Now, again, what is happening here is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Because the agricultural subsidies today go to the rich. And who are the rich? I'm going to start with the major corporations like Monsanto. They don't need these subsidies. This is a way of getting money for nothing from the government. And they spend big dollars. I think Monsanto alone spent something like $32 million to lobby last year, okay? And some American group of farmers that they belong to spent $27 million. The chairman of the two committees, one in the Senate and the other in the House of Agriculture, one got over $700,000, the other $300,000 to their political war chest. I mean, this is big business. And what happens is this. The agricultural subsidies, as you can see, are going mostly to the rich. And remember, food stamps are a part of this program. Food stamps that they cut by $8 billion this year. Can you imagine what congressman can take $10, $20, $80,000 out of this farm program, the same program that provides an ability for the poor to get food? They cut $8 billion over a period of 10 years from the food stamp program, $90 a month. My God, that's chintzy. That's cheap. That's terrible, because the subsidies go to the rich, the food stamps go to the poor. Typical American program today, the 1%, the 99%. Agricultural subsidies to the rich, food stamps to the poor. Which brings us now to, let me see here, just a second, my friends. Today, it was announced today, just today, for the first time today, and it's in the bill that was signed last Friday. And I'm not going to say the congressman didn't know and the president didn't know, because I can't believe they didn't know this. I have already told you that if the senators and the congressmen who are farmers, supposedly, and are getting subsidy checks, the law does not require that they be identified. There's no transparency. Our president promised us the best transparency ever. Well, guess who else you can't find out who's getting the checks? As of this new bill, and it was just brought out today because nobody reads this stuff, it seems, corporations. We are barred from knowing what corporations, like a Monsanto, what corporations are receiving crop insurance proceeds or any type of monies in the form or directly or indirectly of subsidies. We can't know by law who they are. The corporations do not have to be identified. The same corporations that put money in the political war chests of our legislators in Washington, and who lobby big time. I mean, they're lobbying over $50 million a year. Bad situation, very bad situation. Now, something else that came out today was disclosed today. I don't know why these things aren't disclosed before the president signs these things into law. It was disclosed today that the farm program is still sending checks to dead people. Over a 4-year period, the Farm Bill program paid $36 million to over 4,000 people who weren't with us any longer. They were mailed checks for 1 to 2 years. There's one dead person that was mailed checks for over 5 years, dead. And I don't understand how this happens. All you have to do is hook up to the Social Security computer, and the Social Security computer tells you who died. Most federal agencies are hooked up. For some reason, the Farm Bill has never been hooked up. Now understand, this Farm Bill is for $1 trillion over the next 5 years. That's a hell of a lot of money. I don't even know how many zeros that is. And this is what's happening under the Farm Bill. I'm not saying it does not do good. There are food stamps in there that are paid for, not as much as we should have. Some farmers may need help. I don't know. But I can't believe the big corporations do. And I think if the congressmen and the senators are going to become farmers, well, then we should know who they are. Because while they're being paid to legislate for the people, they are directly legislating for themselves the same time. And that's the story of the Farm Bill. I'm sure as time goes on, I am going to have more to say about this because it's a bad situation. I think it's terrible. They should be ashamed. Washington should be ashamed. Moving on. The Farm Bill is an example of governmental waste. Now I'm going to bring out and show you. I do this periodically. I do a little research and I find new governmental waste to talk about. Things you will not believe. These are examples of governmental waste in 2013. There are only 9 or 10 I'm going to share with you. There are hundreds of these. They are easy to find. This is last year, 2013, governmental waste. The Veterans Affair, the Veterans Administration, they had $562,000 in the bank they hadn't used out of their budget a week before the end of the fiscal year. In the government, if you don't use the money, you lose it. It's in your budget, but if you don't use it, you lose it, and they'll probably take that amount out of the next year's budget request because you proved you didn't need it that year, the prior year. Well, they had $562,000. They weren't going to lose it. They weren't going to use it. They bought $562,000 worth of artwork for their offices. $562,000 worth of artwork for their offices. Now, we're hurting in this country, but we're decorating our American embassy in London. A granite sculpture was done by some notable artist, I assume, because the price makes me think it had to be noticeable. I saw a picture of it. It looks just like a pile of stones on top of each other, and it sits in front of the American embassy in London at a cost of $1 million. National Institutes of Health, they fund all kinds of studies, okay? Stay with me on this one. To the tune of $82,000 last year, they funded a study to see if Twitter, we all know what Twitter is, Twitter could be used for surveillance of depressed people. We're going to use Twitter for surveillance of depressed people. How, I don't know, but they spent $82,000 trying to figure out if it can be done. This is a terrible one. The State Department. You know, our State Department people are heroes. Benghazi was a disgrace and a shame. I don't blame anybody. I just think the 4 or 5 radical groups got together and they had a field day and people got killed. That happens. I believe the way Senator Hillary Clinton did, or the Secretary of State at the time. But 1 week before the government shutdown last year, stay with me, 1 week before the government shutdown, the State Department spent $5.4 million. You heard me, $5.4 million. They bought, and I quote, exquisite crystal glassware. Exquisite crystal glassware for embassy parties. At a time when they want to cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. At a time when we had a government shutdown. We took milk away from babies. We took food away from the kids in school. At a time when we're hurting, and we're still hurting, $5.4 million for exquisite crystal glassware for embassy parties. I can't believe they didn't have a lot of old glassware, and they didn't really need this. That's a hell of a lot of glassware. $5.4 million. Another National Institute of Health study. This one for $335,525. 81 couples, that's all were involved in this. And this is absolutely stupid. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. The purpose of the study was to determine if marriages were happiest where the wives calmed down immediately after an argument with the husband. If the marriages were happiest where the wife calmed down immediately following an argument with her husband. $335,000, only 81 couples. I don't see the value of it at all. Now let's go to NASA. NASA finances a lot of things. They gave a grant of $124,995. $124,995 to a company that wants to make pizzas from a 3D printer. You heard me, pizzas from a 3D printer. They gave this company $124,000 to figure out how to do it. Arlington, Virginia, government area, government streets, government sidewalks. At a bus stop with all these government buildings around, they put in a heated pavement so people's feet would be warm and they would be dry. For $1 million last year, a heated bus stop pavement area. And guess what? For $1 million, it did not work properly. Now let's go to this is the best. I think this is the best. And the last one I'm going to share with you, the Interior Department. They built an outhouse, one outhouse. I saw a picture of it. It looks like a outhouse, a wood box 3 by 3 or 4 by 4 with a door on it with a half-moon hole in it. They built this outhouse. They put a toilet in it, one toilet. It doesn't have any plumbing, though. The stuff just goes into the ground, okay? It was on an Alaskan trail. That one little outhouse with no plumbing anywhere, $100,000. Government waste? Absolutely no question. This past week, a committee of the United Nations Committee on Rights of the Child, criticized the Vatican, the Catholic Church, and they criticized them for the following issues. Because they want the Vatican to do the following: remove all child abusers from its ranks, report them to law enforcement, open the church's archives so that bishops and other officials who concealed crimes could be held accountable. They also criticized the Vatican, for opposing contraception, homosexuality, and abortion in cases of child rape and incest. This was a landmark thing being done. No one criticizes the church. No one criticizes the Catholic Church, one of the biggest religions in the world. And you know what they said in this criticism, too? They said the Pope himself has to take a stronger hand. They gave direction. The Vatican's reaction to this, I mean, they're taking the church on the UN. Nobody's ever done this before. Was simple. They said, you're interfering with our religious freedom. That seems to be the cry all the time now with the Catholic Church. Why did this happen? I'm going to tell you why this happened. Why the UN thought they could take a shot at the Catholic Church and get away with it is because the church has gotten involved in politics the last few years. The Catholic Church is involved in legislation in states, is involved in legislation in Washington concerning abortion, contraception, and whatever else, Obamacare. They have the Bishops' Conference. I think it's headquartered in Detroit, not Detroit, Denver. Their budget's a couple of $100 million a year. They got their noses into everything. They're standing with the religious right and saying, bad America all the time. You're violating our freedoms, when I think it's a crock, by the way. I'm saying, and I'm a Catholic, grammar school, high school, and college education's Catholic. If the church wants to participate in the public life, as they have been doing, then they must be ready to play the game and be criticized. They're going to be called for whatever people think they have done wrong. I think this whole thing is wrong. I don't think the church's nose belongs in Washington, Albany, Tallahassee, or any state capital. I think a church should be between the parishioner, one person, and the priest, and you help keep me, on God's side. You help me in my time of woe, but you don't get involved in my politics. I think the Catholic Church has stuck its neck out and is going to continue to do it, and they're going to get their head chopped off at some point. Okay, how are we doing here? We still got 3 minutes. Police brutality. I talk about police brutality every week. It's becoming more and more. Okay, we're in Los Angeles. It's December 26th. 2 police knocked on the door of a residential-looking home, typical residential home, and they wanted to see the father. The son answered the door, son Daniel Johnson, 26 years old. The police officer said they were there to give the father a citation for $1,000. A fine of $1,000 was going to be imposed on him because he dropped a cigarette butt on the sidewalk. Must be the law in Los Angeles. Well, the kid said, my dad's got nerve damage. He drops everything all the time. Can I go pick the cigarette butt up? It must have happened very recently, and the police had seen it. Well, they ended up on the front lawn. The 26-year-old son, the 2 police officers, they got into an argument. At some point, there was an altercation. There were witnesses. The 2 police tackled the son. They got him in a full Nelson neck hold. And then the cop who didn't have him in the full Nelson took out his laser, and this is what the witness say, aimed the laser at Daniel's genitals and lasered his genitals. The witness said they could smell burning flesh. They say the police officer intentionally lasered this guy's tasered this guy's testicles. He was charged with assault, Daniel, but the charges were dropped. And now he has a lawsuit pending, and a very good one, in my opinion. CVS, great drugstore. I compliment them. 7,600 stores nationally. They said we're going to stop selling cigarettes by October 1st. They're going to lose $2 billion in revenue. I smoke, and I shouldn't. And I think it's terrific what CVS is doing, especially they're taking a financial hit to prove a point. Okay, this is basically the show for this week. I wish to remind you, with all due respect, I've got the book I wrote, The World Upside Down by Louis Patrone. If you enjoy the show, you'll enjoy the book because it's a series of short essays about things like this. And some historical stuff in the background, a little bit of Key West. You can find the book, The World Upside Down, on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Buy it. You'll enjoy it. I really mean that when I say it. I think it's terrific. I wrote it. I would think that, but I really do. If you enjoy what I say here, you will enjoy the book. I thank you for joining me this week. I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Have a good week. Stay healthy, my friends.